Hello, everyone. On behalf of the UA Department of Health Promotion and Wellness and our campus partners, I want to thank you all for joining us for today's presentation. Programming is part of UA Body Appreciation Week, which is our university's celebration of Eating Disorders Awareness Week that will be occurring nationally next week. We decided to do our programming this week in particular just to help better facilitate some of the programming that we have throughout the month of February. And so we just thank you all for participating today. I did want to make a few housekeeping announcements and let everyone know that we will be utilizing the first 40 minutes or so for a formal presentation from our partner Magnolia Creek for today's presentation. And that will be followed by a panel Q&A style setting for the remainder of the program. Families are able to submit those questions anonymously should they choose to do so. So we are very excited about today's participation. And without further ado, we want to go ahead and get things started off. I want to thank our main speaker, Dr. Daniel Hagood, and would like to provide a little bit of an introduction for her. She has been a practicing psychologist in upstate New York, specializing in eating disorders since 2005. She holds a bachelor's and a master's degree in counseling psychology from the University of Pittsburgh and a doctorate in clinical psychology from the American School of Psychology. Before joining Magnolia Creek, Dr. Haggard served as clinical director of the partial hospitalization program, working with individuals with a primary eating disorder diagnosis. Along with her specialization in eating disorders, she is proficient in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, and family systems. Dr. Haggard believes that everyone has the potential for growth and change. She has a passion for the treatment and education of eating disorders and particularly enjoys leading and facilitating community outreach projects. So again, thank you to Magnolia Creek and Dr. Haggard, and I will turn things over to you.
So she actually called me this morning and she has laryngitis.
Oh no.
So she is going to be joining and be here, but I'm going to do more of the presentation and then she's going to chime in here and there and just kind of be present for if there's questions and things like that, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And then Jessica Shafer, also from Magnolia Creek, thank you so much for joining us today. Let me double check and make sure I have the settings for you to be able to share your screen with everyone.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Okay. So let me put this in presenter view. Okay. Is everybody able to see that okay? Okay, perfect. So I will go ahead and get started. Thank you, Sheena, for the introduction of Dr. Haygood and of myself. I am also an alumni of Alabama. I finished my undergrad and my master's there in human development and family studies and in marriage and family therapy. So roll tide for everyone on the screen. My background is in marriage and family therapy, and so I worked as a family therapist at Magnolia Creek for 5 years. And over the past year, I have been doing more of the outreach and business development role. And so now I market for all of our eating disorder facilities. We have 5 across network, and so I cover Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Texas. And so I'm able to go out and talk about eating disorder services and the services that we have at each of our facilities and be a resource to guiding clients to the higher levels of care and then also stepping the clients down back into the community after, making those connections and knowing what resources are offered in each community setting. So, a little bit about Magnolia Creek. We are located right outside of Birmingham, Alabama. We are on the Columbiana, Chelsea, Alabama line. So, about 45 minutes, 45 minutes, depending on 280 traffic, um, um, outside of downtown Birmingham. And so, we are. We're located, our facility is on 36 acres of land, so it's out in the country. We have a beautiful property. I think that's one of my favorite parts about our facility is the setting itself. It's very serene. It's very home-like, structured, very home away from home or summer camp feel. So it was a family home that was turned into a facility many, many years ago. We are able to serve all biological female clients ages 12 and up. So we have an adolescent program that is ages 12 to 17. And then in our adult program, it is 18 and up. And so in terms of levels of care, we have residential level of care, and then we have PHP levels of care at Magnolia Creek. Bed capacity, we have 14 residential beds for adults and 6 to 8 PHP beds for adults as well. There's a separate house on our property that is for the adult PHP clients. And so they're able to practice that independent living, but still be, within 50 steps to a nurse's station so that they have that support if they need it. We also, in the adolescent programming, we have 10 beds. And so they have a house, we call it the cottage, that is right across from our main house that is in this picture below. That is the adult main house. And so there we have 10 beds, and that is kind of all encompassing residential and PHP levels of care for the adolescent program. And Magnolia Creek is duly licensed as an eating disorder treatment facility as well as a mental health facility. And so we're able to offer more of that individualized care for primary eating disorder clients and secondary substance use disorders and a variety of mental health disorders that kind of go hand in hand with eating disorders. And then the other picture on this slide is a picture that was taken by one of our staff members a few weeks ago. This is essentially our backyard. This is the gazebo. And so we're able to have sessions and things like that out here. And then we have a lake that we take a lot of advantage of, whether that's just sitting out there and enjoying the water, clients going fishing, family members going fishing, throwing rocks when we need to let out some emotions and all that. And also just, feeding the fish or seeing the turtles, the variety of turtles that we have out there. So I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of just different eating disorders, the diagnostic criteria, the difference between disordered eating and eating disorders, and then how you can support someone that is struggling with an eating disorder. So the eating disorder, the diagnostic criteria is from the DSM-5. It is listed under the feeding and eating disorders section. And they are described and characterized by a persistent disturbance of eating or eating-related behaviors that result in the altered consumption or absorption of food that significantly impairs the physical health or psychological functioning. So it's all consumed by the way that one is eating and consuming food and how that is impacting or vice versa their mental state and their physical and psychological functioning. Eating disorders are a serious mental health and physical illness. It is not just about the food. They involve complex and they're very complex, and they damage relationships with food, general interpersonal relationships, eating, exercise, and one's body image. It looks different for everyone, so that's important to keep in mind as we're talking about this. They're real, they're life-threatening, and sometimes they are fatal conditions. They involve extreme emotions, attitudes, and behaviors surrounding weight, food, and size, and body image as well, caused by a biological range of psychological, biological, and sociocultural factors. They are found in all populations, regardless of race, ethnicity, age, religions, socioeconomic status, gender. They do not discriminate, just across the board. As many as 20 million and 10 million men will struggle with an eating disorder at some point in their lives. That's a pretty high number. Eating disorders often have very little to do with the food or the body, but that is just how they manifest. Um, they're actually a lot to do with the illusion of control, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. Eating disorders have the highest probability of death, along with substance use disorders, among all psychiatric disorders. They also impose a significant burden on the normal development of a healthy identity and one's ability to function socially. And that is impacted in their interpersonal relationships, familial relationships, romantic relationships, their jobs, just their whole sense of being. And also they result in a decreased quality of life. When our brain is not functioning the way that it needs to due to malnourishment or behaviors, we are not functioning to the best of our ability. So therefore, that is a lower quality of life. This is a very important part to point out, because whenever we think about eating disorders, I think a lot of times we have this idea of what they look like or what that criteria is. And a lot of times it is not what we think. Sometimes it is, but sometimes we have a very skewed view of that. And so it is a lot bigger when it comes to the diagnostic criteria than what we just think it may look like typically. So disordered eating versus eating disorders. Disordered eating can look similar to an eating disorder. The point of distinction is the degree to which the individual is engaging in the disordered eating. So kind of the degree of what's in control. Is the person in control, or is the eating disorder itself in control, or the disordered eating in control? Disordered eating may involve dieting, calorie counting, negative body image, excessive exercise, elimination of different foods or food groups, anxiety concerning different foods or meals, or settings where you're involving food and engaging with other people, desires to lose weight, use of diet pills, food rituals, and or inappropriate food-related behaviors. Disordered eating can also be seeking external food or body-related instruction seeking instead of listening to internal signals. So that is where, you have a meal plan that's telling you what you should be eating and what you shouldn't be eating, instead of focusing on your body's normal hunger and fullness cues. Diets tend to numb your intuition, which creates shame and an isolation from life and disconnect from the body's natural signals. Disordered eating is often praised in our diet culture. This makes it particularly difficult for individuals suffering to seek help. Because, oh, well, this is what I saw growing up. This is what all my friends did, or this is what this commercial did, or, hey, this influencer is glamorizing these diet pills. And so it is very, very normalized in our society that we should seek outside enhancements or supplements or specific workouts in order to have a specific body type, or to look a certain way, or to have a certain social status or acceptance from outside factors. A little bit more about the difference between eating disorders and disordered eating. Individuals struggling with disordered eating or an eating disorder may be both infatuated with desire to change their body, to eat in a certain way. They're changing the way that they're exercising or their behaviors, but they may lack insight into how dangerous their struggles are. With disordered eating, they may be a little bit more insightful, whereas with an eating disorder, they may be so far disconnected from that it doesn't matter, because it's a means to an ends for them. Or the eating disorder brain is how we like to say it. The greatest difference, again, is the degree to which the person is engaging in the behaviors and how much those behaviors are impacting their lives, physically, psychologically, emotionally, cognitively, just across the board. Disordered eating, while not necessarily a diagnosed eating disorder, it can pose a greater disposition to the likelihood of that person developing an eating disorder later on down the road. If someone's just going through, maybe a fad diet for the first time and they decide they don't like it and they stop doing it, the chances of them developing that are lower because they're no longer engaging in this behavior. But if someone is doing this for a very prolonged period of time, and then the desire to keep doing more, that is where it kind of turns more into the eating disorder criteria. Disordered eating is a major public health concern. When I first started at Magnolia Creek, I was given a list of disordered eating habits and behaviors, and the list is pages long. And I was like, wow, I have so many of these behaviors. It is something that almost everyone struggles with to some degree, whether we are conscious of it or not. Early intervention is key to preventing this life-threatening disorder. So it's always important that whenever we're noticing these things that we can intervene and help those clients find the care that they need and support so that it does not turn into a full-blown eating disorder, or if it is getting to that point, that they can have the support that they need as early as they can. Again, eating disorder facts. Eating disorders are very complicated and nuanced disorders and vary from person to person. So it's going to look different with each person. Even if I have two clients sitting in front of me and they both have the same eating disorder diagnosis, their behaviors are going to look different. Their triggers are going to look different. The way that they present physically or emotionally is probably going to look different. Eating disorders do not discriminate, so it happens to people of all ages, ethnic backgrounds, body weights, and genders. The onset typically occurs in adolescence or young adulthood, but that is not limited to those age ranges. There's not one distinct cause of eating disorders. Research has found a number of genetic, biological, behavioral, psychological, and social factors that increase the risk of the development of an eating disorder. So it's not always just one thing. Sometimes it's a perfect storm of 10 different things that they've experienced and gone through throughout their lifespan. Eating disorders are life-threatening and they have the highest mortality rate. Number 5 is a really important one. There's not a miracle cure. There is not a treatment plan that is so black and white of, okay, if I do X, Y, and Z, then, my loved one can be cured, or they will be recovered once they do this said thing. Eating disorders manifest in a lot of different ways. And so each person, based off of their experiences and their roots of their eating disorder, that is how we get to the point of recovery, or we're living a recovered lifestyle. We have to work through those things in order to get to the other side. And each person's story and experience is going to look different. Determining whether someone is struggling with an eating disorder is not an exact science. Again, there's many manifestations of this, and they present with a lot of different warning signs. 9 truths about eating disorders. Many people with eating disorders look healthy, but may be extremely ill. This is the first one, kind of what I was saying earlier about the biases that we have. I had the same bias growing up. Growing up, I thought, oh, if someone looked a certain way, if they looked super sick, then that meant, oh, they have an eating disorder. But that's not always true. Number 2, families are not to blame and can be the patients' and providers' best allies while in treatment. A support system is so important when it comes to eating disorders. It's an integrated care approach, and that involves a loved one, whether it's family members, parents, spouses, partners, cousins, you name it, sponsors. That support system is very, very important. And so to place blame on those people, it is not helpful or beneficial. An eating disorder diagnosis is a health crisis that disrupts personal and family functioning. Number 4, eating disorders are not a choice, but they're serious biologically influenced illnesses. When we talk about choice, we can talk about choices of, recovered behaviors, or following, treatment instructions, or doing the best next thing, or the right coping mechanism. Those are more of what we have choices in. But sometimes it is a predisposition that people are born with. Eating disorders carry an increased risk for both suicide and medical complications. Number 7, genes and environment play important roles in the development of eating disorders. Number 8, genes alone do not predict who will develop an eating disorder. And number 9, full recovery from an eating disorder is possible. Early detection and intervention are important. That's a really important one, especially coming from a setting, a higher level of care. Clients often say it's not possible, or, I've seen people and they've never recovered, or they've relapsed. And so if I try this, that means I'm just going to relapse. Recovery is possible. It's just going to be about the intervention and support and the right steps in treatment for each client, individualized based on their success in that. Here's some warning signs of eating disorders that are around food. So dieting, avoiding a wide range of foods, so different exclusions, avoiding situations where communal eating is expected. So not eating out, not eating at restaurants, not having that control of what someone is consuming so that they more inclined to bring food with them to certain situations, or they're more inclined to just eat at home. New interest in healthy, clean, low carb or vegetarian diets. I'm using air quotes here because we say all foods fit. It's just about the balance. So labeling foods as good food versus bad food just creates that stigma around, oh, well, I shouldn't eat this because that's bad for me, or this is going to make me gain weight, or this is going to make me fat, whatever the thought process may be. Inflexibility about what or when or how much to eat. So there's a lot of rigidity, a lot of anxiety about it has to be a certain way, or what if it's not this certain way, or I feel like I can't control it being this certain way. Unnatural focus on what others are eating. So a preoccupation with what other people are eating, looking around, sometimes focusing on other people eating versus them eating themselves. Again, rigidity on the certain ingredients or utensils. A lot of times clients, something I thought was interesting from being in the treatment setting is a huge discomfort with soups or casseroles, things like that, to where they can't see it all individually portioned out. So they don't know what all the ingredients are that go into it. That might create or induce a lot of anxiety for someone. Needing to know the calorie content of all foods. Again, kind of the same thing I was mentioning. Unavailable for family meals. So maybe an avoidance around holidays, or family gatherings, that might elicit a lot of anxiety for them. New interest in cooking and recipes, but avoiding eating the food. So someone who might bake a lot and say, hey, I made all these, snacks and I want to give you all these things. And, someone might say, oh, well, do you like it? Oh, yeah, I love it. But they've never even tasted it themselves. That is a very common occurrence. Someone who's really in love with being in the kitchen and preoccupied with being very involved with their food. So their brain, it could interpret that as a way of eating or being engaged with food or creating a normal relationship with food. Foods, especially carbohydrates, disappearing quickly from the house. When we are not, that may be something that they are eliminating from the diet and they want to not have it at all, or it may be something that where they are in a constant state of starvation, they are craving those items, and so then they are eating them or consuming them secretly. Secretive or ritualistic eating, avoiding food until certain hours, anger at others if pressed to eat something, just kind of that up and down mood swing could be very present. Self-criticism for eating or not exercising. Oh man, I shouldn't have eaten that burger. I didn't work out this morning, so maybe I'm going to go do that now. Fear of overeating or gaining weight from a particular meal or type of food. Visiting the bathroom or showering right after meal times, or getting up and leaving the table during a meal. Warning signs of an eating disorder surrounding around activity. So someone who may be exercising intensely, but without pleasure. So they're not, maybe they coming from a dance background. So instead of maybe training for, a new dance that they have coming up, they are doing it to burn calories, or they're going to, wear ankle weights to help them burn more of those calories or challenge their body a little bit more. Needing to exercise to compensate for eating. Again, like I mentioned, oh, well, I had this big lunch, so I'm going to go run 2 miles now. Medically, so the failure to gain weight or height according to growth curve. So based off of their growth charts, maybe they're not where they need to be in that weight range. Weight loss at any time during childhood or adolescence. That could be a drastic weight loss or something that happens over a longer period of time. Fainting, weakness, dehydration, injuries from overexercising, falling a lot, things like that. Thinking, so a conviction that one is too large. So seeing their body as something that it's not. So having a distorted body image. A natural focus on the flaws of a particular part of their body or an aspect of their body. So a preoccupation, maybe with their arms or their legs. and always kind of talking about that or bringing it up. Repetitive requests of reassurance about their appearance. So kind of bringing that up and seeking out that external validation from other people, whether it's positive or negative. Maybe they know someone might respond negatively, and so maybe they go to them so that that could be like fuel to the fire for the eating disorder behaviors. And an inability to understand that they may be ill. So just this like very strong denial that they're even sick at all. Belief patterns and choices that indicate a focus on weight loss, food rituals, or eating patterns. Socially, they may be withdrawing socially from their friends, family, loved ones. Report to others are newly judgmental or not connecting. Oh, well, we just don't have much fun anymore, or I don't really like hanging out with those people anymore. So making excuses for why they're not spending time with those people that they typically would. Inability to describe their emotions, but you may be noticing some mood swings. So there's probably this strong disconnect from their emotions because their eating disorder has probably become their way of coping, but they're very detached from what they're coping with. Physical warning signs of an eating disorder, kind of again, a little bit more in depth here. Weight fluctuations, severe constipation, low blood pressure, slowed breathing impulse. They're lethargic, they're sluggish, consistent reports of feeling tired, brittle hair and nails, dry yellowish skin. They could lose their menstrual cycle, distorted body image, so seeing their body one way when we're looking at them and it's clearly not the same. A lot of comparison to others' body image, to others' bodies or their activity levels. Oh, well, I wish I could be able to run that, or I wish I looked like that, or I wish my body was shaped this way. So kind of always like comparing themselves out loud to other people. Lanugo is the growth of soft hair all over the body. So when our body is malnourished, our bodies are very strong and amazing vessels. And so our body is always trying to survive and keep us safe. And so when we create, it will grow more hair in our body to help regulate body temperature. Stomach and GI issues, lightheadedness, fainting, dizziness, muscle weakness, impaired immune system functioning. So maybe they're getting sick all the time. Beliefs, patterns, and choices that, again, are focused on the weight loss, food rituals, or eating patterns. Checking in the mirror often, that could be a sign of body checking. So, looking in the mirror and like measuring their wrists or different body parts with their hands or with measuring tapes, or sucking in, or touching their collarbones, doing different things like that to kind of measure if they've gained weight or if that part of their body still looks the same, or using that as a goal to work towards. And then, of course, the intense fear of gaining weight. So here are the different breakdowns of the diagnostic criteria. So there's anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, binge eating disorder, OSFED, other specified feeding or eating disorder, and then ARFID, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. Anorexia nervosa, this is characterized primarily by the self-starvation and excessive weight loss fixation. So some of the symptoms may include inadequate food intake leading to a weight that is clearly too low. So someone who, kind of going back to what we're saying about excluding different food groups. So maybe their food group is 5 items and it just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And those are the only things that they will consume, which of course leads to a disturbing amount of weight loss. The disturbance and experience of body weight or shape, intense fear of the weight gain, a strong obsession with numbers. So obsession with how much they're weighing, what their caloric intake is, or how much they're exercising, how many calories they're burning in a day, how much water they're intaking, fluid. Very, very focused on the number piece. Same with the weight number. And then the ability to appreciate the severity of the situation. They will, with anorexia, it's very similar. I would have lots of conversations where oh, I have this goal in mind of I want to weigh this much. Well, when they reach that goal isn't good enough. So they're just gonna, the goal is always going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, no matter what it is, whether it's with, the food choices or the weight or the ability to succeed at something specific. For bulimia nervosa, the differentiator here is it is characterized by binge eating and the behaviors such as vomiting, an attempt to undo the effects of the binge eating. So binge eating is consuming large amounts of food in a short period of time and then immediately going to purge that food, throw it up. Vomiting, laxative abuse, and excessive exercising. So the compensation of getting it out of the body physically or using other behaviors or alternates to lose that weight, perceived weight gain that they had from what they just consumed from the food. Feeling out of control during a binge eating episode. When they have lots of food in front of them, but they can't control their amount of consumption of what they take in. It's kind of what all is in front of me is coming into me. Extreme concern with body weight and shape, a lot of body image struggles and body dysmorphia here. And then a lot of times with bulimia nervosa, most of the people are of a normal weight in this category. Binge eating disorder. This is characterized by the recurrent binge eating without the regular use of behaviors such as getting a little somewhat over my words. So the binge eating is happening without their ability to manage their behaviors. So whatever coping mechanisms they typically would go to, maybe they're not working. They're not helping them stop that behavior. So again, kind of that feeling of feeling out of control when it comes to eating those foods. Such as eating when not hungry, eating to the point of discomfort, so making themselves sick sometimes, or eating based off of, sometimes we can call this emotional eating. They're eating because of shame about their behavior. Let's say they binged this morning, so I feel guilty about my binging this morning, so I'm going to do it again. So it's kind of like this self-fulfilling prophecy in their brain. Well, I'm a failure at this, so I'm going to really fail at this. Again, strong feelings of shame or guilt regarding their binge eating cycles. Avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, also known as ARFID. This is characterized by the lack of interest in food. This is often based out of a fear of negative consequences from food or eating, or they are selective and could be seen as the picky eaters. So this is when someone is reducing their food intake and frequently complain of discomfort with no apparent cause. Lack of appetite or interest in food with a range of preferred foods narrowing over time. So this may be this person who struggles with eating certain foods due to texture. Maybe the sound of eating celery would be really overwhelming to them. The crunchiness or the texture of the food itself being in their mouth, that may really bother them. So there's a preoccupation with the fears and the sensory pieces of it versus the body image or the weight for the other eating diagnostic criteria. And then here is, we call OSFED, other specified feeding or eating disorder. And so a feeding or eating disorder that causes significant distress or impairment, but does not meet the criteria for another feeding or eating disorder would be diagnosed as OSFED. So maybe they are meeting like one or two criteria, diagnostic criteria for the aforementioned diagnoses, but they're not meeting every single one. So that is where atypical anorexia nervosa comes in, the subthreshold for bulimia nervosa and binge eating disorder, and then there's purging disorder, and then night eating syndrome. And again, each of these look very, very differently, but this is kind of the diagnosis where we're meeting some of the diagnostic criteria for the other ones, but not completely. Again, kind of what we mentioned at the beginning, when there, a lot of times, most of the time when there's an eating disorder, there's a lot of co-occurring disorders as well. So the prevalency in this is very, very high, whether that's with depression or anxiety, OCD, PTSD, whatever the mental health or substance use disorder or other co-occurring disorder it could be. And in the same sense, it can also very much so intensify the eating disorder symptomology and impact their level of their ability to receive treatment. That could indicate what level of care they need. If you have someone who's struggling with suicidal ideation and an eating disorder, maybe they need to go to an inpatient unit first if they are actively suicidal or struggling with self-harm urges or behaviors. Maybe they need to be stabilized there first before stepping down into a residential facility for eating disorder and mental health. Again, most of the common comorbidities are mood disorders, anxiety disorders, and substance use disorders. Treatment should address coexisting conditions and eating disorders concurrently. When that is done, the success of the client being able to manage both the eating disorder and the co-occurring disorder is greater. And it's kind of like the whole conversation of, is it the chicken or the egg? Which one came first? Well, when we can kind of just get to the root of what's causing both, or kind of they're kind of ebbing and flowing between each other, then we can do that deeper emotional work and hopefully manage the symptomology of the mental diagnosis or the and the eating disorder at the same time. Again, what causes eating disorders? The list is very, very long because, again, it's not just one solo thing. Biological risk factors, that is a huge component of it. There's many genetic factors and predispositions to mental illness and medical illnesses. So oftentimes when individuals have a family history of mental illnesses, they are more likely to experience mental illnesses themselves. Even if the predisposition for the mental illness is not an eating disorder specifically, the eating disorders commonly co-occur with those diagnoses, such as depression, anxiety, substance use issues, to name a few. Another piece is an individual's medical history. So if someone has, type 1 diabetes, there is diabulimia. And so the chances of them developing an eating disorder, it is higher based on their medical history as well. Psychological factors, we've kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but again, based off of cultural backgrounds or religious beliefs, just the environment that one is raised in, bullying, their relationships, their low self-esteem, if that's something that they're experiencing, impulsivity, distorted body image, perfectionism, that's a huge one. Also, if someone has experienced a form of trauma, big T, little t, any forms of trauma, their likelihood of developing an eating disorder is higher. So I like this picture because it kind of gives you a little bit of a roadmap. But at the same time, I like the squiggly line in here because recovery is not linear and treatment is not linear. And so it's going to be over here sometimes, and it's going to be over here. It's going to be up and it's going to be down. As long as we start with the awareness piece. And so once we're aware that someone may be struggling, we can intervene and then hopefully get them into professional treatment, whether that is an outpatient level of care or a higher level of care, such as residential PHP or IOP. And based off of the things where they're at in the acuity level of their eating disorder, that will determine the level of care that they need. And then it is continuing ongoing support. And then they're working and living in a recovery stance. I like that it ends with recovery, not recovered. It is not something that you finish and you're done with for the rest of your life. It's not a cold that you take a round of antibiotics for and you're done. It is something that you manage for the rest of your life. Some days may be great and some days may be really hard. And maybe you haven't struggled in 10 years and then out of the blue, you have a bad body image day and you're feeling a lot of emotions coming up and you may be triggered to engage in behaviors. It is an ongoing recovery process. And then here's a picture that kind of breaks down the different levels of care. So at the bottom is inpatient. That is the highest level of care for an eating disorder. And so maybe that's where someone is not at a place where they can voluntarily consume food. And so maybe they are needing the medical treatment to provide their body what they need, whether it's through an NG tube. The next level of care is residential. And that is where they're able to consume foods on their own, but they're needing round the clock care, 24/7 support in terms of managing those behaviors, being monitored medically, and having a longer term stint of support in group therapy, meal support, and having more of that multidisciplinary team as a dietitian, therapist, medical provider, and everything. Partial hospitalization is where you're in treatment most of the day, maybe 5 to 7 days a week, but you're practicing independent living at night, whether that's at home or you are you're still at a treatment program that has housing on their property. IOP is where you're going to treatment for a couple of hours, a couple of days a week. So this is where maybe you're going to a couple of different groups throughout the week instead of just doing a 1 hour session with your dietitian or therapist or medical provider, which is the outpatient level of care. So this is just a few examples of how you can help. And these are very, very broad, and this definitely doesn't cover all of them. But do learn as much as you can about eating disorders. The best thing you can do is be informed, knowing what they look like, knowing the warning signs, knowing how to prevent them, or how to support someone that is struggling with one. Be honest and vocal about your concerns. A lot of times parents or loved ones feel like they have to walk on eggshells because it's like a ticking time bomb with their loved one. And that is normal. And that is really tough. And so the best thing you can do, though, is still be honest and seek that support, even though there may be some fear of how your loved one might react if you do intervene. Be caring and firm. Hold a boundary. And if you're struggling with knowing what that looks like, seek that support for yourself, because taking care of yourself as a loved one is just as important as your loved one getting the care that they need as well. Suggest that they seek help, from a physician or a therapist. Maybe that's seeking out some resources and then offering them to them, or saying, hey, let's do this together. You're not alone in this. Being a good role model, practice what you preach. If we're wanting, our loved ones to seek support for their eating behaviors, but we're doing all the fad dieting trends and we're over-exercising after eating a meal that we deem as unhealthy, we're setting the stage for them to do the same thing. And I'm not here to shame anyone by any means at all, but just being mindful of the mirror that we're showing them. Learn how to be the best support your loved one needs based on their own individual needs. So as a family therapist, I would always say what helps me may not help your child. And so it's always important to say, what do you need? What is most helpful for you? How do you feel most supported? And then being able to offer that. Validating that this is really hard. Even if you do not understand it or get it or agree with it at all, validate. This is exhausting. This is scary. This is really hard to do. Don't place blame, shame, or guilt. Don't make rules or promises that you can or that you cannot keep. Well, if you do this, then I'm going to give you this huge proclamation, or I'm going to buy you a dog if you get a treatment and you complete it successfully. But then there's not an idea of following through with that. Giving simple solutions. Do not invalidate their experience or try to convince them. Oh, it can't be that bad. You can do it. You just gotta get through this. Give advice about weight, exercise, or appearance. Well, this is what I did, and this is how I managed my weight, or this is how I dealt with my over-exercising. Don't ignore or avoid the situation until it is at the point where it is severe or life-threatening. It is really, really hard to intervene at that point. It's hard to intervene in general, but at that point, it's even harder to reason with someone that is struggling with the eating disorder. Don't provide tips or play the numbers game. Well, if you eat 50% here, then you don't have to supplement there. No bargaining. Do not emphasize the seriousness of eating disorders without portraying them as hopeless. it's okay to express your feelings of hopelessness, but it's also important to emphasize this is serious, but you can also recover from this. And don't argue. It is a fight you will not win. The best thing you can do is to take a break, step away, come back to it later, or say, hey, let's talk about this in session tomorrow, or let's call our therapist tomorrow and have an emergency meeting or whatever it may be. And then here are just some examples of different topics and statements to avoid. I know I'm a few minutes over. So I'm going to go to the next one because I want to make sure that to help explain this a little bit more. So whenever we're, coming from a Southern culture, I was raised that as being a woman, how to relate to other women or meet other women is to compliment each other, right? It's to say, oh my gosh, your hair looks so great today, or I love that dress. Where'd you get it from? Whatever it may be. So being mindful of what someone might hear when we say things to them that is struggling with an eating disorder. Again, the eating disorder brain. So when someone says, you look so much better, their brain may hear, oh, I've gained weight or I'm fat now. Your face is filling out. My face looks fat today. Your bones have meat on them. Oh, wow, I look different. I'm gaining weight. The eating disorder doesn't want to hear that. It's going to take that and run with it. You look healthy. Oh, well, I don't look sick anymore. I've let myself go. I'm no longer in control of this. You don't look like you have an eating disorder. Oh, well, I need to lose more weight to be sick enough. You're eating, so what's the issue? Oh, well, maybe I shouldn't be eating as much. And so I always say cautionary, just compliment someone based on their personality. Wow, like I feel like I see so much more of your personality today. Or, hey, I really enjoyed our time we spent together last night. I felt really connected versus you were so sweet last night. Just focusing more on the experience, who they are as a person, things like that, instead of the physical piece of it. Communication is so important because, again, like we said earlier, this is how you can support your family members and loved ones. And also still maintain a relationship with them. I used to say to parents when I was working in treatment is, let us be the bad guys. Let us be the food police. I just want you to focus on being a mom and dad, or I want you to focus on being a husband. I just want you to be a partner. And so trying to bring it back to that, because sometimes before treatment, that becomes your role. You're monitoring what they're eating. You're monitoring their behaviors. Hey, did you eat all of your lunch today? And then there's this fear of if they're telling you the truth, and then their fear of being honest with you and what you're going to say if they didn't. And so seek support out for that. Let someone be that middle person. Let someone else be the bad guy, and let you guys learn how to communicate and navigate through this process together. And then the last one is my favorite part. It's listening to understand versus listening to respond. When we seek clarification versus giving advice, we're going to create a deeper level of connecting with our loved ones. And this is just a great, communication tip in general. It's not your loved one isn't going to feel like you're trying to control them or that you don't understand them. They're going to feel like, oh, wow, they care to understand it. And they're not looking at me as just an eating disorder. They're looking at me as someone they love, and they're trying to understand my struggles. And that will make the world of difference. And then here are just some resources that are all over the web and that we are close with and practice with. And of course, Dr. H and I are here as a resource. If I can figure out how to stop sharing. We're always here as a resource as well if anybody ever has any questions or needs anything.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I really appreciate the information that you've shared. And as we transition to the next part of our program, as we end our time together, this is going to serve a dual role. I'll have my panelists introduce themselves in just a second. They'll also mention the area that they work in and how their work intersects with students who may be in eating disorder recovery. So we really want families to know what resources are available on campus, and then also to For any questions that may have popped up for you during your time listening to Jessica's presentation, we want to make sure that we get those answered as well. And so we'll go ahead and transition to our panelists introducing themselves. Brian, do you mind starting us off by introducing yourself, please?
Hey everybody, I think I know most of you. I am Brian Penley. I'm a case manager with the Office of Care and Wellbeing here at UA. We work inside the Dean of Students office. My background is mostly with the medical withdrawal process here at UA. I held the title of medical withdrawal coordinator for many years. Brought the program online and got it working for UA. So I do deal with a lot of students who are coming for medical withdrawal with eating disorder, going out into therapy, and then with them coming back. One of our main goals is to make sure they have resources when they come back, that we get them in touch with the right people, the right counselors, and make sure that they're successful here at UA and provide them with those resources to help.
Thank you, Brian. Andrea, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Of course. Hello, my name is Andrea Early. I'm a staff therapist at the Women and Gender Resource Center. I specialize in trauma, and I'm so happy to be here. I learned so much from our speaker today.
Thank you, Andrea. Angelique?
Hello, good evening. I am a staff therapist with the Counseling Center here at the University of Alabama. And so we are able to support those in recovery by assisting with the therapy interventions post significant treatment and once they are a little bit more stabilized. We have tons of therapists here that specialize in a range of things that could be helpful with processing and managing any type of crisis once they return.
Great, thank you. And Sherry?
Hello, I'm Sherry Simpson. I'm a registered dietitian and I work through the Student Health Center and Pharmacy. We're located on campus. My role in the treatment, I do treat a variety of conditions, but I would say about half of my patients do have some type of eating disorder, disordered eating. And I treat patients on what's considered an outpatient basis. So we have the students come in, kind of find out where they are, and sometimes I'm also just a connector to other resources as well, and try to find out where they are and make sure that a lot of times I'm gauging whether outpatient is meeting their needs, or do they need a connection somewhere else for a higher level of care.
Thank you. And Alex?
Hey Sheena, and hey Jessica, good to see you. Yeah, so I'm Alex Livock with the Collegiate Recovery community here at UA, and we provide services for people in recovery. We have, well, Collegiate Recovery community, so a community of students who are all in recovery from substance use and now eating disorders as well. And so we're mainly not clinical, although we do have access to therapists here in our department. Ours is based mostly around community and peer support and that kind of thing. So.
Perfect. I know we didn't necessarily have any questions submitted in the chat, but I will pose a question for our panelists, including our wonderful staff from Magnolia Creek. What would you say to parents who do have that concern about I guess getting their student into a higher level of care and then thinking, oh no, my daughter or son is not going to graduate on time now, but I feel like they need help. I didn't know, how normally those kind of conversations are navigated, because I feel like often family members may bring that up, especially if the student is in college.
Yeah, that definitely comes up a lot. So I think that I think just connecting, like if someone is on your end, if someone is having that question, I would say, can I get you connected with someone at a facility. You can get connected with me, and then I can just have that conversation with you very transparently. And we can talk about the realities of what it looks like if we wait. You know, let's say, okay, well, let's wait until they graduate. Well, are they going to even get to that point? You know, the longer we wait, this is going to get, the harder it is going to get to intervene. And then I always would say, you know, let's connect with the, you know, with staff like Brian, that we can talk about what that process looks like of medical withdrawing, or dropping a semester, and then looking at, you know, let's create a plan of when we can start back and how much we should start back with. Because the idea of trying to manage, you know, a 16 to 18-hour course load and go to treatment, it's really unrealistic, because trying to focus on both is trying to focus on school in general as a college student is really hard. We all know that. But then you add in trying to also do intensive therapy all day, 7 days a week. That's also really hard too. And so taking a short break in the grand scheme of life, it is just a very short period of time. And the goal is to, you know, get through it and have a solid care team and treatment plan set up so that when you do step down, that is solid versus, you know, feeling like you have to wait and then not sleeping at night because you don't know if you're going to make it to that 8-week mark that we're hoping to meet.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. We do have two questions that have come in the chat. So first question, and Jessica, this could be directed to you or Dr. Haygood. What is a day like as a resident of Magnolia Creek?
So the days are very structured. So we have a wake up time. And so when they're waking up, they're getting up and they're doing their morning routine of, you know, brushing their teeth, showering, whatever it may be, getting ready for the day. And then they're coming downstairs or going to the kitchen and they're picking out what they would like for their exchanges to be for breakfast. And either they're preparing that or staff is doing it for them based off of their portioning process and level that they're at in their treatment. They'll have breakfast and then they have about an hour of free time between 8 and 9 before the first group of the day starts. So during that time, they may be doing labs and vitals, weigh-ins, things like that with the nurses and medical team, or they may be in a session if a staff member is there to do that at 8 a.m. Or they're having some free time to do journaling, work on homework if they do have it from their team. Sometimes they're still very sleepy and it could be taking a nap. And then from 9 to 10, it is a therapy group. And so the therapy groups range just across the board. And they vacillate between dietetic and therapy groups. So sometimes it's meal planning groups, sometimes it's cooking groups, sometimes it's a psychoeducation group, a trauma group, body image group. You name it. We kind of we rotate through the different group topics each week. And then so it'll be like a group, a snack, and then a group, and then a snack. So there's 6 meals a day, 3 meals and 3 snacks. And then there are 4 to 5 groups throughout the day as well. And then in the afternoons, they have yoga. And so that is a movement group that they're able to engage in. And then they have about a 30 to 45-minute break before dinner. After dinner, they have time to call loved ones, send emails, do their nighttime routine, things like that, watch a movie, hang out. And then we have a lights out time frame. And the next day it starts all over again.
Great, wonderful. Well, we have time for this one last question, and this may be best for our therapy staff on campus between Angelique or Andrea, but we have a question. It says, where is a good place to start with your student if you recognize there might be an issue, but they're resistant to your viewpoint? So how can parents navigate that with their student?
Okay, so when I talk to students, and I've actually talked to quite a few parents working with parent programs and things. We talk a little bit about sometimes stepping back from that role of like, I have to fix you, but more so like, how can we navigate this together? And so it's like, hey, here's what I'm noticing. And I know that I'm not the expert and I'm not the best person to help you with this. So how can we work on this? Because these are the things, I'm noticing, and that's not how, you've always experienced things. So maybe making it more of this is a team effort to get better. Here are some things that I'm noticing, and I am concerned, but I also know, because I think a lot of times parents are fixers, and I get it, because you're like, you've been able to fix everything for them all this time, but this is something kind of outside of the realm of control. So trying not to control it, try to lean into the partnership of we're fixing it together.
Absolutely. Andrea's right. Another thing that could be helpful, if they are just shutting you down as the parent, is you can encourage them to maybe schedule a screening with the counseling center. These are 30-minute conversations that are done with our crisis intervention team and our screening team that just talks about what may be going on and how you're feeling. And this is a perfect time for them to bring up, hey, my parent has brought up this thing, and I just kind of want to talk it out because this is how I feel about it. And sometimes having that outside person could be an option. The reason why I say encourage them to reach out to the counseling center to schedule that is you want to allow them to have the autonomy here, right? Because so many things are happening and they are feeling like they're perceived a certain way. And so allowing them to go to an outside person that doesn't involve you but allows them to speak freely could be really beneficial. And that is a free thing. So they can schedule a screening for free at any time.
Thank you so much. I think actually that was a great question to really end this program on. I want to again thank our staff and partnership with Magnolia Creek for today's rich information. We have recorded today's webinar, so if there was information you do want to go back to that was reviewed, you will have the opportunity to do that. We're also sending an evaluation where you can put in your input for any future topics of this nature for how you can support your student. I also want to thank our panelists who served today, our campus partners. I hope that you can see the evidence of their compassion for your student and the support that they have. We certainly, when we think about our students' overall health and well-being, this is something that we prioritize first and foremost for our students here at the Capstone, and we're grateful to partner with our UA families. But we thank you all for everything. Please do not hesitate to email us at healthpromotion@ua.edu for us to field any additional questions. We can send those to the appropriate campus partners. But with that, we say thank you and roll tide. So thank you, everyone.